town to monitor those elections so there's a full and fair and free election for the new president at the end of November, which I think is the ultimate best ending of this very, very tragic story.
Lanny Davis, again quoting from CNN from their report on July 19th, that said, earlier Saturday, Arias outlined 7 steps he believes needs to be taken. The first step, he said, is that Zelaya must be returned to power. Do you agree with the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the Costa Rican president?
Well, remember, I represent, you keep saying Chamber of Commerce, even though I corrected you twice, Amy. I'm not sure why.
Go ahead, repeat who you represent.
It's the Latin American Council of Business Leaders. Latin American Council of Business
also
Leaders.
Known as
I said it was the functional equivalent of
yes.
the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Okay.
So do you agree with Oscar Arias that Zelaya must be returned?
I can't offer you my personal opinion. I will offer you the representation of the moderate business community who I do represent, who does say, in retrospect, the sending of Mr. Zelaya out of the country could have been done differently. But I think they believe that Mr. Arias's entire proposal, which boxes Mr. Zelaya in to following the law and the Constitution, despite the professor's disagreement with a 15-0 decision by the Supreme Court, they found the referendum to be illegal and unconstitutional. So Mr. Arias, reflecting that, has put Mr. Zelaya in the box of the rule of law. And I think the position would be is that nobody trusts him to violate the law, and I wasn't characterizing or using inflammatory words when I said it's on videotape on YouTube. I'll let your viewers look at Mr. Zelaya the day before the 28th leading 2,000 people yelling and screaming and violently pushing forward into the Air Force Base. I won't use the word MOB, but what I just said are facts. The president of the country doing that, defying the Supreme Court and defying the Congress to seize ballots that were shipped in by the government of Venezuela. Now, those are all facts that provide the context of why the Arias proposal, which is the basis for negotiations, has to be fleshed out so that if Mr. Zelaya returns, he's required to follow the Constitution and the rule of law and won't lead another group of people, if the word mob offends the professor, another group of people to violate the law and override an Air Force Base guard in order to seize property.
Lanny Davis, let me ask you another question. Article 102 of the Constitution prohibits the expatriation of any Honduran. The Honduran military, guns drawn, went into the home of Zelaya, 5 o'clock in the morning, ousted him, put him on a plane, shipped him out of the country. Would you say that is unconstitutional?
I've already said, and I think there may be some problems in my microphone with you, Amy. I already said that what was done that night should have been done differently, and that in retrospect, the understanding that I have is
how should it have been done?
I think he should have been arrested and prosecuted for what the Supreme Court said was a violation of the law. And let me clear up one other factual error you continue to make. The Supreme Court ordered his arrest by a 15-0 vote and issued an arrest warrant, despite the professor's incorrect statement. And it's the Army that reports to the Supreme Court to arrest a senior official of government under Honduran law. So the Army executed a 15-0 arrest warrant issued by the Honduran Supreme Court. Now, when I state these facts, Amy, in the future, when you introduce guests of my perspective, I hope that you will balance your loaded words like military coup and other things that you said in your introduction to say, however, to be fair, this was a civilian ordered arrest by the Army of Honduras, which under the law is required to be used, not the police.
Do you feel President Obama was wrong in originally calling it a coup?
I think the word coup is used by people to describe the forced ouster of an executive official, and that is the way that President Obama saw it from the first announcement. I think in the second and third look at the facts, when it was seen that he was ordered to be arrested and he had taken himself out of the presidency, I think the professor was correct in saying self-executing. Under Article 239, anybody who tries to extend the Constitution, the term of office, is prohibited under 239 as president and is
automatically
removed from the presidency.
Professor
so
Greg Grandin.
Yeah, coup if he no longer was president.
Again, in respect to 239, that was ex post facto justified, and the original Supreme Court ruling. In the original Supreme Court ruling, it didn't mention Article 239. This was an attempt to put a constitutional veneer on what the rest of the world is in fact calling a coup. Now, in terms of the rule of law, which Mr. Davis invokes quite a number of times, let's talk about the current regime. The recent international observation mission, made up of 15 human rights groups, has documented what they call, quote, grave and systemic acts of political repression taking place. There's been at least 10 murders or disappearances, all of them Zelaya supporters, the latest being last weekend. Martin Florencio Rivera was stabbed to death, leaving the wake of another executed Zelaya supporter. Mr. Davis talks about the Catholic Church. Well, it turns out that progressive priests, Jesuits, environmentalists like Jose Andres Tamayo is being hounded by soldiers. Just the other day, the police attacked the university. The rector of the university, Julieta Castellanos, was beaten with riot clubs. Members of death squads from the 1980s, and most famously Billy Hoyer, has returned to support the Micheletti government. The government is closing down radio stations. Radio Globo, one of the few radio stations that is calling it a coup, has been shut down. Due process is suspended. Large parts of the southern part of the country have 24-hour curfews. This is the face of the regime that Lanny Davis is saying is constitutional, is saying is upholding the rule of law. I don't understand how a Democrat can defend it.
Greg Grandin.
Can I respond?
Lanny
First of all, my
Davis.
name is, apart from getting your facts wrong, my name is Lanny, not Lonnie, but that's okay. I don't defend any. That's okay. I don't defend if any of those things are true. If any of them are true, the people involved.
They're all true. They are all true. They're all documented by international observers.
All right, Professor. I think we're now even 2-2 interrupting each other. So maybe from this point on we won't do it. If they are true, then those people are thugs, criminals, and should be prosecuted. And there are plenty of institutions in Honduras that would prosecute them. The last time that I heard of a charge, however, before we believe truth, because due process is also about getting truth, not believing allegations. I heard somebody and saw on television, the allegation was on CNN, where an individual said, my mother was abducted from the house was surrounded by police, and I am a Zelaya supporter. The second or third day story was that this individual was involved in a spousal beating and was arrested, and his mother said, I wasn't ousted from my house. Now, that was the second or third story. So I'm not denying anything you said, Professor. I'm saying let's be sure that what was seen to be true is true, and if those people did what you said, and if there have been media organizations shut down by the Micheletti government, which I do not believe is the case, but in my mind is open, that's wrong. That's a violation of my liberal principles, your liberal principles. There should be prosecutions. As long as you concede that Zelaya violating the law according to the Supreme Court and its controlled Congress of his party said he violated the law and the Congress voted him to be removed, that you will respect democratic institutions in Honduras and not attribute it all to the, quote, elite, which is where we started in the very beginning.
Professor Greg Grandin, the U.S. State Department's view of the Honduran Supreme Court?
Year after year, the State Department's annual human rights report has characterized the Honduran Supreme Court as presiding over one of the most corrupt and politically influenced and controlled judiciaries in the hemisphere. It's controlled by a kind of rotation between the National Party and the Liberal Party, very small cliques within them. I mean, just go back and you can go to the State Department website, and, prior to the coup, the State Department was very critical of the Honduran Supreme Court. So that's a very politicized, its interpretation and its of events. I wouldn't base my opinion on its interpretation of events.
May I respond to that?
Lanny Davis, I wanted to ask you a question. Have you had a chance to speak to President Obama about this issue, representing your clients?
I don't. No, I don't speak to President Obama. I wish I could, but I don't. And I would challenge the professor to cite the page number of the State Department report that said the Honduran Supreme Court is corrupt.
I don't have it in front of me, but it's
well,
online.
all of your viewers that are watching, as many as there might be, I challenge that statement. Secondly, it was a majority of Mr. Zelaya's party who controlled that Supreme Court. So if you're attacking the Supreme Court, I assume you're attacking Mr. Zelaya, who put those justices on the Supreme Court. And finally,